Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatahu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week, coming to you from Sharjah TV. As always, I'm your host, Ismail Bullock. And today we're going to talk about a topic, like we always try to do, important topics that are relevant to our daily life. And today we're going to discuss anger management. Anger is something that we all, in theory, we all get at some time, but how can we manage it and how should we deal with our anger from an Islamic perspective with guidance from the Quran and Sunnah? And to do that with me is brother Muhammed Khan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So obviously anger management is something we can get. And some people may say, oh, I don't get angry. But you may find that people who don't get angry, then they get frustrated, or they get worked up. It doesn't necessarily have to become like outright anger, but people can be quick to get worked up about something. They hear something and they assume something, and this happens a lot. A lot of this anger problems, which I'm sure we're going to discuss, comes from people getting the wrong assumptions of something, and they start to get worked up, and then they find out later that wasn't even the case. So whatever the scenarios are, today we're going to look at how do we deal with this as Muslims. Anger, is anger good? Is it bad? And I'm sure we're going to see lots of ayat and hadith and tips from the Islamic perspective.
Well, yeah, and as always, this is quite an interesting topic, and subhanallah, there are always beautiful topics discussed on this program. Barakallah feek. May Allah reward you and the team and everyone who are putting this up. And again, this topic is something which is very essential in our daily lives. In the corporate and in the management world, they may put this under the heading of soft skills, like the one who communicates well, the one who manages his things, manages his time and his anger, his frustration well, he manages the team. They may put this under soft skill, but when we look at it from a more broader perspective, it is one of the core skills which is required for us to deal on a daily basis. Like we deal with our family members, we deal with our close ones, we deal with strangers, we deal with people at work, university, college, neighborhood. And on a daily basis, this is what life is all about. We are not people who are just living secluded, alone, in the deserts or jungles, and this is basically not a part of Islam. Islam doesn't encourage this as well. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created us, and we are in a setup, and we have these emotions. We have various and different types of emotions. One of them is anger, and therefore it's extremely essential for us to manage this well and deal with it more intelligently. We're not going to say that you will never get angry or we will never get angry. This is not the purpose of the discussion. The discussion here is that how can we manage our anger appropriately, and how can we take care of our behavior, our character, and what is required from us. And when we look at the Quran and Sunnah, we'll be surprised to see that there is so much. Today people have these gurus, and they have these self-help stuff, books and videos and whatnot. But subhanallah, when we look at the Sunnah, beautifully from a psychological perspective, from a scientific perspective, from a behavioral perspective, everything is so beautiful and to the point where if a person looks at the Sunnah and he sees what is required from him, inshallah, he will be good to go, and he will be in a position where he can manage his anger properly.
And it's a good point you brought up there, because like you said, so many people, they go and join these courses, or they turn to these, many of them obviously are non-Muslims, for these how to live like this, or how to be a positive person, or how to be like this. And you find many of these people, and they don't even know it themselves, these so-called life coaches, they don't even know themselves that they're actually saying things that when you derive the origin, it goes back to teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, when they teach people how to be effective communicators or effective communication, they say, when you want to emphasize a point, repeat this point, emphasize on it 2 or 3 times. And we know the Prophet ﷺ used to do that. They tell you if you want to get the message across, be interactive, show something with your hands. And we know the Prophet ﷺ did this, many, many times. He would use things around him, or he would draw in the sand, or he would do something to get this point, to really stay in them and for them to memorize this thing. So a lot of times we as Muslims, we don't realize, and I'm talking to myself as well, we don't go deep enough or search in Islam. We automatically sometimes we think of Islam as certain things, prayer in the mosque, certain acts, and then, I need to know about how to be a positive person. I'll go to this, made up name, John Smith at mucksmithlifecoach.com or something. In reality, we, a lot of time, not saying you can never do that, but a lot of time we already have this in Islam, but we just don't realize it. You go to some of the famous books of famous scholars of the past who are known for their kind of character building, heart lifting, spirit lifting, and you find so many of these things that when you quote them to non-Muslims, they're like, "Oh, this is amazing. Who said this?" And they're shocked to see that this was, a classical Muslim scholar from like 1,000 years ago. So we have a lot of this information, but we tend to not look for it and go elsewhere straight away.
That's right. And when we look at anger, so it's considered to be an emotion. In psychology, it's also considered as a secondary emotion. So it's like something triggers and then the person gets angry. So for example, a person might be frustrated because of a situation, and then he expresses anger because of it. Someone might be, say, in a position where he is not patient, he is unable to get a job, and then he shows anger. So the experts also explain that it is a type of a secondary emotion, and there is something going on in the background which is triggering a person's anger. So of course we'll look at that also, like how do we find our triggers. But as rightly you said, the problem is that we don't give it much importance, and we don't do the research, which is not like a PhD research required from us, but it's basic research required on the part of a human being to know how can I manage my behavior, how can I manage my anger, how can I manage my frustration. And this is something, as a Muslim, first we should refer to the Sunnah, the Quran and Sunnah. What does the Quran tell us about? What does the Sunnah tell us about? And we should see and try to learn what have the scholars explained about it, and how do I implement this in my life. This is what is required from us. Secondly, as you also said, it's not impermissible blanket that we cannot refer to some of these theories which are there, like how can we control anger and how can we manage it, some tips and some psychologically what can be beneficial, what's not, of course, which is in line with the Quran and Sunnah. That could be researched, and today, subhanAllah, there is so much out there where people just have to consciously look for it. And as the Quran also says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So if there is indeed someone who trains people about emotional intelligence, and anger is a part of it, how can a person control himself, how can he be more calm and composed, and how can he be in the position he is, then that's fine. That's following the Sunnah, that's following the Quran and Sunnah. But of course, one has to be careful that whatever knowledge he's taking, it has to be in compliance with the Quran and Sunnah. Therefore, we say that we must research, look at the Sunnah, look at the Quran, what does it tell us about anger, and then also see what are the theories and tips and management tips and anger management tips out there. And then inshallah, a person can be in a good position to see, okay, what am I supposed to do and what am I supposed to avoid. Secondly, the problem of not managing anger well is self-harm and harming others. So we see that it has various problems if a person does not manage his anger well. But to start off with, it's harming one's own self and harming others also. So a person harms himself, he harms himself physically, emotionally, psychologically. When a person is in the rage of anger and he is unable to manage it well, control it well, he may experience depression, he may experience this a blocked mind where he cannot take proper decisions, he cannot decide for himself. He may face some of physical issues such as high blood pressure. He may get these attacks. There are also researches which say that a person can also be hit with a stroke if he does not control his anger and in this rage of anger. And apart from that, harming others. So this is extremely important for us because we live in a society, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us relationships and responsibilities to fulfill. So these responsibilities can only be fulfilled when we manage them well, like husband and wife, parents and children, siblings, our managers, our colleagues, those who are under us, those who are above us, people in the neighborhood, in the society overall. So all of this requires for us to have a behavior where we are able to fulfill our responsibilities. If not, then what happens is divorces. We know the cases of divorces, and without exaggeration, almost all or most of the divorces are due to anger. That's what even some of the scholars, they explain, that it's because of anger, and the issue was not a big issue, but it's just because people did not manage their anger well, and it turned out into a divorce or a khula for that case. Then there are fights in families where siblings are fighting, parents and children. There are fights with uncles and aunts and whatnot. So just because of the reason where anger is not managed well, there is a type of frustration. People don't see how they are supposed to deal with it, and then it turns out into fights, and in fact even long-term fights where people are not even speaking to each other for like decades. And whereas the Prophet ﷺ, he advised us that it is not permissible for a person to abandon his brother for more than 3 days. Like irrespective of the situation, one should not exceed in not speaking to the other person for more than 3 days. And then we have situations where real brothers and real sisters and real siblings, they haven't spoken to each other for decades, and this is a big calamity. As I mentioned, the problems of anger is physical health problems as well, like headache, blood pressure, anxiety, heart problems, and even stroke for that case. A lot of cases have been reported, like when we look at the crime rates, many killings and many accidents take place because the person was in the rage of anger. He's extremely angry and driving his car, rashly, and then he kills himself and he kills others, and he ends up, in this big chaos. Apart from that, so many people, they get angry at each other. They either harm the other person, break the other person's bone, or hit on his face, or even kill for that case. There are many cases, in the courts, on the statistical data, we see that so many killings take place just because of anger.
It's true. I mean, you see, like you said, you see so many killings, you see so many people's lives destroyed. Sometimes it can just be that one moment of anger where the person didn't control the anger. But now we're going to go for a break, so we'll continue, inshallah, after the break. Join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back. Now, just before the break, I was just trying to emphasize, like you said, so many problems can come from anger. And sometimes it may be the person that's not generally a person who always gets angry, but there's a time where something really gets them angry and they don't control it and they explode. And like you said, it can lead to destroying relationships, can even lead to death. And it can, and you hear someone like, ruined his career or his life because of one outburst of anger. He could have just not controlled himself and insulted his manager, for example, and he had his dream job, as they say, or a really good job, and he got fired because he did not control anger. So it's definitely something we control. And something came to my mind, but I won't mention it, on one of the ways to calm down your anger, but I'm sure this is going to come up.
That's right. And when we look at the benefits, as rightly you said, so we see that in the society there are people who say, yes, I'm controlling my anger. But then rightly, the person is just trying to suppress his anger and then he keeps on exploding, like he's boiling from inside, and then one day he explodes. So this is not what is required from us, to be clear. That a person, for example, a situation comes and then the person, he's just suppressing his anger. He does not explode there, but then later on he's like, this situation was very bad and this person is very bad, and if I get a chance next time, I'm going to show it to him, and this and that, maybe behind his back or within himself. What is required from anger management is that we know how to deal with the situations and manage the actual thing well, which requires communication. Like there will be situations where a person will become angry, and we will look at that. The Prophet ﷺ got angry. The Sahaba, they got angry. And even as Muslims, in some cases, getting angry is praiseworthy. But what we are talking here is a behavior where a person is exploding for no reason. He's just fighting for no reason. He wants his thing to be established. He wants everyone to listen to him. There's no controlled behavior, where the person does not listen, pay heed. These are the actual problems which you are trying to address. Apart from that, there will be some times where a person will become angry, and how to deal with that is shown in the Sunnah, and there are many ways of that as well. But when we look at the benefits, a person will enjoy a better well-being, a better mental well-being when he controls and he rather swallows his anger, as Allah mentioned in the Quran, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, that those who swallow their anger and they forgive others, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, and they forgive others. So here we see it's like a pillar of building our character around this, that the person, he swallows his anger, not just suppress it for some time and then explode the other time, but he swallows his anger, which is bitter, definitely. The person might not like it at that moment, but then he just sees, okay, is this right for me to do or not? So doing the right thing is what is required from us as a Muslim, not just to suppress it and then explode later on, and then do ghiba or slander the other person, or within ourselves keep boiling. So this is what happens, and we get an example of this, this controlled behavior from the Prophet ﷺ. So on one occasion, the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ, they came and they told him, Assalamu alaikum. They told him, death be upon you. And Mother Aisha, radiallahu anha, she got basically angry upon them, that how can they say this to the Prophet ﷺ? And it's natural. Anyone, including us, we get angry if someone tells anything to the Prophet ﷺ, even now, but that's in front of her telling it to the Prophet ﷺ. But look at the behavior and composure of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, wa alaykum, like to be upon you as well. And that's how he dealt with the situation. Not beating them up or not abusing them, not telling them you people are disbelievers, nothing. He just dealt it with a very composed way.
Because Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, wa alaykum as-sam wal la'na, poison and curse be upon you. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, like to Aisha, radiallahu anha, not to say that, rather just say wa alaykum, and to you too.
That's right. And this is like, subhanallah, a situation which, like, where will we see this example? Like, those are literally the enemies, not even the relatives. Then how should we deal with our relatives? People are fighting with their uncles and aunts and brothers and sisters just based on, he took my thing, he didn't give me that, or he told me this, he abused me, he used this bad word, he sat in my place, he did. These small and petty issues, we are, spoiling our relationships. Here, the Prophet ﷺ is dealing with his enemies in a beautiful way. So here we come to know that it's a calm and composed personality which is required from us, where we deal with the situation. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told how to deal with this. And similarly, once we understand this, we will be in a position, okay, this is my situation, how should I deal? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do? And that's what, inshallah, we are supposed to do. Preserving relationships. The benefit of anger management is we preserve our relationships. As mentioned, that a lot of relationships break because person cannot control his anger. Either the mother is very short-tempered, or the father, or children, and this is a problem where people don't learn how to solve the problems. Rather, it's just taken out in anger. So many times it's when people fight, they wanted to tell something and which could be valid, but then it comes out in anger. You did this, you did that, and last time this happened. But if that was told, in a peaceful, maybe over a cup of coffee or over the tea, that would have been solved. But when it's the moment of anger, people start accusing and telling, and then even the good things are not taken in a positive way. Allah mentioned in the Quran, and this is a praiseworthy trait of the believers, that they swallow their anger, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ, and they pardon men. Verily Allah loves al-muhsineen. So this is told to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Imran, ayah number 134, that these al-muhsineen, Allah loves them. They basically swallow their anger in the moment of rage, in the moment of anger. They swallow their anger and they forgive others. They forgive men. And subhanAllah, this is something which is really something to ponder about, because whom will we forgive ideally? It is the one upon whom we can, maybe instill a punishment, or we can maybe punish them, those who are under us. This is, basically people whom we are supposed to forgive. If we are in a position where we cannot do, it's the police who has caught us maybe on breaking some rule, or it's our manager or boss, we always say, that time we can control our anger. But it's those who are below us, like, maybe our children, employees working under us, some of our relatives, we show this anger and we express this anger, which is not the case, with other people. So logically speaking, when we look at some of the situations, like with the boss, with the police, with the authorities, we can control anger. Even at that moment when we are feeling angry, we swallow the anger at that time. So why not with others, those who are weak, and those who are, sometimes people, just because of their status, they show anger. If it's a poor person coming and he did a mistake, so the guy might just blast him and show his anger. Whereas if the same thing was done by someone of his status, then he will be very calm and polite and whatnot. So this is where we have to do our tazkiyah, our self-introspection, that where do we stand. Now, there are some misconceptions and excuses which people give, that I cannot control my anger. And, they say that I generally get frustrated, angry, because when we look at the situation, no one likes such a person, who gets angry often, who is grumpy, who is, always trying to pick faults, and who's always trying to make an issue. No one likes such a person. And the Prophet ﷺ told us, the strong man is not the one who can overpower others in wrestling, in fights. Rather, the strong man is the one who controls himself when he gets angry. This is in Musnad Ahmad, and it is Sahih. So here, the Prophet ﷺ is telling us, who is the strong one? Not the one who has muscles and who can overpower others. That is the definition of strength, which the Prophet ﷺ is giving a similitude with. So he's saying this is not strength. Strength is where a person gets angry, and then he controls that. Not to say that he's never going to get angry. He will get angry, but here he controls it. He does not do anything which is against Allah. He does not do anything haram. Like, for example, when people get angry, they hit on the face. And this is something which is prohibited in Islam outright. Like, a person cannot hit the other person on the face irrespective of the situation. But people, like parents, they hit their children on the face. There are siblings, elder siblings hitting their, younger siblings. And then you have so many teachers hitting their children, just out of anger, because they don't know how to deal with the situation, so they hit on the face. So here we see that the person should not cross the limits, and the stronger one is the one who controls his anger. Now, there's also another misconception where this anger is correlated to masculinity or something which is, praiseworthy, because, people see a lot of fiction films and dramas where, the main character, the hero, is shown as, the angry man, and he's the one who shows his anger and gets his things done. But this is not the case. Our role model is practical, real life role model. That's Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, because He knows us best in and out, He created us, not some fictitious character, And this is something which is a problem, where people get influenced by maybe some angry personality on screen, and then they try to mimic him. They try to think that, okay, if I'll be like him, I'm going to break things, I'm going to shout at people, I'm going to fire people, they're under me, and then this will make me feel good, which is not the case. At the end of the day, a person feels pathetic, he feels empty from inside, and one day or the other, the person gets to realize this, that his behavior has to be controlled. Also, many people, they say, I'm born like that. This is also one of the excuses, that I'm just born like that, I'm born angry. But then we see that in the academia, there is a big debate, and where a lot of researches have been done, that nurture overtakes your nature. So there could be a possibility where a person, by default, as they say, genetically, but his nurture will overtake what his nature is. And that's also what we come to know from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ar-rajulu ala dini khalili," that a person will be upon the way of his friends. So those who are around us, we will mimic them, we will try to adopt their ways. And this is again something which is scientific, because they also did some researches, where they put some sample groups in like one place, one room, and the one who was having, say, like an authoritative personality, others started mimicking them, mimicking this one person. And similarly, we see that when there are a bunch of friends, group of friends, it's always that you get this influence from them, you try to mimic them. And the Prophet ﷺ also said, a person is born upon fitrah, later on his parents make him whatever he is, they change his belief and they instill belief. But a person is born upon fitrah. So nurture overtakes your nature, a person's natural thing, and then that is something which one starts practicing. So one should never say, no, I'm born like this. When the person tries to work on himself and he tries to see and adopt the methodologies, inshallah, that will bring a change in him. Another misconception, before we go into the actual solutions.
I'm just going to stop you there, because before we do that, it's time for a break. Join us, inshallah, after this short break. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back. Now, just before the break, you're about to go into a new point.
Yeah, so again, we were discussing the misconceptions, the excuses made by people, that I don't get angry, I'm born like that, and I always get angry, I get frustrated easily. Now, these are all, we must know that these are all excuses. These are all excuses for a person who is not willing to change and who's not willing to face the challenges. Yes, we will face these challenges, and sometimes some test is bigger for the other person compared to his friend or his family member. So one person may have this composed personality, he may have this, he's able to control his anger in a better way. The other person might not be, and it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But no one can say something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed, and something for which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold us accountable. No one can say, I cannot do this, and this is not in my personality, or it's impossible for me to do. Because Allah will never hold us responsible for something which we cannot do, or which is impossible for us to do. Another excuse or rather another misconception is that one should never get angry. And this again is something where we are talking about legitimate situations where people express anger or they can get angry. And when we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, the huge difference here is that the Prophet ﷺ, he expressed anger, he got angry when the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were broken. When something against Islam, the Quran, against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was done, that's the moment when he felt anger, that's the moment when he expressed anger. But again, not the way we do, like breaking things and throwing things, and still he had a controlled personality. Still he didn't do things which are like na'uzubillah, which we do, we become like completely out of our mind. The Prophet ﷺ was in 100% control of himself, but yes, he expressed anger when the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are broken and when something against Islam was done.
That's right, because Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ never got angry that was about something that was to do with him. And that's why we see these continuous things of a Bedouin man coming and grabbing him, a Jewish man coming and grabbing him. Some of them, when they grabbed him, they grabbed his cloak, that it made a mark on his neck, and the Sahaba were like, let us.
SubhanAllah.
The Prophet was like, no. He smiled. So we see many of these situations where he was insulted. There was a man who had risen his sword to try and kill the Prophet ﷺ. He was alone with him, and then Allah made it that the man dropped his sword, and then the sword was in front of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ could have taken that sword because this man was coming to kill him. It was a legitimate, like self-defense, but he didn't do so. So we see this, that he wouldn't get angry on these personal things, but like you said, only when something in the religion was transgressed, he would become angry. But like you said, again, not like people these days, they get angry, they become like another person, they become like a bad person, they swear, like you said, they break things and they throw things. Of course, nothing like that. But in comparison to his normal demeanor, he became angry. He became angry.
That's right. And again, this is a part where a person, if he sees something which is against, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, against the Quran, against the Sunnah, then it is actually a part of Iman where he feels this discomfort. On some occasion, he gets angry, and on some occasions, he gets frustrated because things are not in his hand. But he manages that in a controlled way, through his controlled behavior. Another example was that, where the Prophet ﷺ was told by a man that be just. SubhanAllah, someone telling to the Prophet ﷺ, be just. Like he holds the position of the best human being, the best messenger. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if someone has any status, it's his status, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a person comes and tells him, be just. And subhanAllah, look at the way how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam dealt with the situation. Now, this is an attack on his personality. So he was very calm, he was very composed, and then he replied, the mafhum is that, who will be more just than me? Like, he is the most just, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he didn't tell his companions, punish him, or take him and show him, or nothing. In fact, he told it in front of everyone. Just imagine, today someone who's someone who's respected and someone who's has many followers, and he's told something. How would he react? He will take it on his ego. He will take it on his self-esteem. But here, the Prophet ﷺ, he knew that this is not how things have to be dealt. And his telling him that he's not just doesn't make him unjust. This is again an aspect of positive psychology that we must know, that if the other person, he tells us something and makes us angry, then we are not supposed to respond back thinking that what he's saying is the truth. They told that the Prophet ﷺ was a magician, he was a sorcerer, he is a mad person, na'uzubillah. They called all these names which even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran, that the disbelievers, they called Prophet ﷺ with these names, and this is like a direct attack on his personality. But the Prophet ﷺ never took revenge just because of his personal grudges, or he never kept those. Just because of personal attacks, he never took out his anger, or he never punished the people. It was only solely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever he did. So here we see that one aspect is that we are supposed to take care of ourselves, not get angry, frustrated, behave in a foolish way when it comes to our personal things, when it comes to personal attacks, personal relations, things related to this dunya. We must let go of things and we must not show this anger. On the other hand, when it's about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has to be controlled, it has to be managed, and it has to be expressed in a way where things don't go out of hand. But subhanAllah, we see in the society today a lot of domestic issues, social issues in families, where people, when they see others doing anything haram or breaking the laws of Allah or anything, they're like, okay, let it be, we are relatives, and it will cause, they don't want to advise. Even say a person might be praying 5 times, his relative is not, but then he'll say, no, if I call him to pray, he will think bad, and there will be rifts in the relationship. So when it comes to the deen, people are very understanding, and they are very cool with it, not to advise the other person. But when it comes to the worldly matters, dunya, they blast each other, they fight. It could be a small thing, a person is not invited for a wedding, and people don't speak to each other for years. A person might have told us, because of their cultural background, when people get married and families come together, 2 different cultures, 2 different families, something might be okay in his culture which is not okay in the other person, and they say it casually, and then the other person makes a huge issue out of it. So these things, when it comes to our relations, our family members, our close and far families, we have to be very positive about it, that when it comes to the matter of dunya, myself, he told something to my child, he told something to my wife, he told something. We have to let go of these things when it comes to the dunya. When it comes to the matter of the deen, we have to advise others, we have to show that what's right, what's wrong, in a more polite way, with hikmah, and that's how it's supposed to be done. Now, moving ahead, before conclusion, we'll just see that how this, how do we get into the problem solving, how do we get into managing our anger well. And first and foremost is tazkiyah, self-assessment, as they say. It's every individual has to assess himself, where do I stand, what is my character, when do I explode, when do I blast people, when do I fire people, and when do I lose my temper. This is something which requires efforts. I mean, it's not going to just come by listening or seeing a few things, but it requires, maybe as the experts, they suggest that you should write it down. Write it down. What are the situations when I get angry? What are the things and situations when I get angry? It's like a profile assessment where a person does his own tazkiyah, his own assessment. Where do I stand? Am I a short-tempered person, or I don't react? Am I a passive person, or am I too aggressive? So this is something which a person has to look into. There's also an aspect which the psychologists, they suggest that one has to look at people around him, because there is a huge impact on one's anger and this frustrated character based on his upbringing, or based on people around him, like his parents, his siblings, teachers, friends. If they were in that behavior, then it's very likely, it gets on to the child. And we discussed earlier that the Prophet ﷺ said, a child is born upon fitrah, but it's people around him, they change him. That's a mafhum. So here also, there are many studies done, there are many researches done, where a person who has been involved, or rather, say like fights, domestic violence, and he has been seeing people, fighting and abusing and using these, because we, subhanAllah, sometimes see small kids like 7, 8 years, 6 years, 7 years, using foul language, using bad words, lying, which is not normal for that aged person, for a small boy, and fighting and hitting each other. It's not normal for that child, but it's because of the surroundings, because of what he's seeing around him, and what he's seeing from his friends or from his relatives or his parents in the first case. So this is something which one has to assess. Of course, there shouldn't be any blame game now, because this is for self-assessment, to know, okay, yeah, this is where I stand. You don't have to go to your relatives or parents or friends and say, because of you I'm getting angry, and because of this is not what is required. But one has to make that change himself. Know your position, that yeah, I stand here, this is my situation, this is what I've experienced, and now I need to make that change. So this is required from us, and this is something even the youth, the teenagers, the youngsters, because nowadays people are exposed to a lot of video games, a lot of computer games and social media. And subhanAllah, this is the era of social media. Like every child is hooked onto it. Therefore, we see that there is like this personality which is developing into like very frustrated personalities, where they get frustrated if things don't happen instantly, and if things don't happen as per them, and if they don't get pleasure in that. This is a real problem where people are getting away from the real world and they are into this fictitious world, and that's a major problem currently, which a lot of even the medical experts, they are worried about that. Youngsters having issues of chronic diseases like depression and anxiety and heart problems and these things, youngsters. So this is an issue, and a lot of goes back to where a person does not manage his behavior well, and he just explodes for no reason, explodes without any reason, and because of his triggers, he might be like a heavy gamer. Nowadays it's the youngsters and children, they feel praiseworthy, like I'm a heavy gamer and I spend like hours and hours on games, and not knowing that even the parents are thinking, my child is just playing a game, but not knowing that the bad impact and the addiction which it has is immense and it's great. So these are some of the ways, some of the things which causes anger, and these have to be avoided, and rather we have to do a self-assessment and tazkiyah of ourselves to know where do we stand and how do we control our behavior.
Inshallah, Jazakallah khair for sharing that, and I'm sure that we can probably even do another episode on this,
Inshallah.
Because there's so many elements to it, inshallah. Also, thank you all for tuning in, and inshallah join us the same time, the same place. As always, I leave you with the greetings of Islam, the greetings of peace. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.